Welcome to Choreography, a show about the greatest sport on ice, figure skating. I am Wendy Buskey, and I'm here with my husband and co-host, Adrian Buskey.
We've been gone for a little bit. Last time we talked to you was with World Championships, which were a delight. And we've had things that we wanted to talk about, but, you know, life got in the way. And
as it often does.
Yeah, and we didn't come back around. This is kind of our season wrap up, but with a feature on Stars on Ice.
Yes.
Because we just got back from seeing Stars on Ice in Chicago at the Allstate Arena in Rosemont, Illinois. And we have a lot of big, warm, happy feelings about that. And we want to talk about. We also are going to touch on World Team Trophy, because we should have given that a whole episode, because that might have been my favorite thing in the entire year.
It was pretty darn good.
Of competition. It was just so fun. And then we just kind of want to do just a really quick retrospective on the year, the things that we were most excited about, you know, what has us excited for next season. And then there'll be other stuff in between that we're going to do.
We'll sprinkle it in, but really I do want to kind of start with what is the big thing in our brains right now, which is the Stars on Ice tour. So we went to the, obviously, you know, if he's mentioning Chicago, the U.S. version of Stars on Ice, which followed Stars on Ice Japan, Stars on Ice Canada, and now here we saw, I believe, the fourth or fifth to last show of the whole tour, which was fantastic. I thought that both the show itself and all of the warm fuzzies I'm still feeling off of it are brought about by the skaters themselves, but also the fact that, Adrian, it was your first show. And it just made
my first Stars on Ice. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, first show period, because you'd only been to a competition before.
Right. Yeah. So if you've listened to any of the other episodes, you heard me talk about the fact that, like, well, Wen is like a seasoned veteran of the figure skating world. And I think, how many Stars on Ice was this for you?
I believe it was my 10th, but I had not been to one in 13 years.
Okay. So the only live in-person event I think that I've ever been to was men's nationals back in
sometime in the 2000s.
Yeah, in the mid 2000s somewhere. It was one where it was, you know, Johnny Weir and Evan Lysacek, you know, competing to give you a sense of what it was. And it was great. But at that event, you know, we were in a big arena. It was, you know, lights up, you know, competition. You're up off the floor, and we had okay seats, but like in a corner, but fairly high up. The Stars on Ice experience, this one that we went to at the Allstate Arena in Chicago, Wen got us third row from the ice, which she didn't tell me until we got there and went to go get our seats.
I had been both excited at the prospect of surprising you with such good seats, but also I had been bitten before. I had gone to a Stars on Ice at Madison Square Garden sometime in, I don't even want to mention the year, but I had gone there and had thought I had like second row seats and had misread the ticket on and reference to the map and ended up in the balcony, which was heartbreaking on a lot of levels. So I didn't want to say anything and then be wrong. I was pretty sure and I was pretty excited, but I didn't want to say it.
Yeah. So we got there, you know, third row back from the ice in a corner, right directly across from the entry hall where, you know, all the skaters, you know, come and go from the ice. This kind of, you know, gala / pageant / performance event. I don't know exactly how you categorize it.
A spectacle.
But yeah, you don't have the boards. So you were literally, the first row is literally on the ice as the performers were, you know, like right on the same level with them. So we were literally up like just like 2 riser lifts from there. And that, if you haven't experienced it before, is such a striking way to see and experience elite pro level skating, because watching them on TV, even on your big screen at home or whatever, is impressive. You're seeing these incredible athletes do amazing feats of artistry and dexterity, and it's astounding. But in person, it's this whole other level. To see Nathan Chen throw a massive jump in front of you, to see somebody go into a full spin at a speed that your eyes cannot keep up with in real time, to see Brandon Fraser throw Alexa Knierim across the ice, and to actually have that sense of like, that's so far and so high and so perfect. It's wild.
I was so excited to get to feel how happy it made you. Like, I was living in my own moment because I've been going to Stars on Ice since I believe the first one I went to was 93. Whenever I first saw it, I was, my first one, I was also back up and kind of the way back, but it was still that magical experience of really feeling like you were part of something and getting to really see every bit of what they're doing. But over the years, my very, persistent, tenacious mother somehow every year got us just a little bit closer and a little bit closer. And I had a few fortunate years of going to Stars on Ice and being in the front row. And it was always just this mind-blowing experience of exactly what you're saying, like just getting to see the real distance, speed, and complexity of what they're doing. It's really hard to quantify unless you just can see it. But also during a lot of those shows that I saw in the 90s, they involved Kurt Browning, and this one did too, which was nothing I ever expected to get to see again. I honestly thought that was, again, 13 years ago was the last show I went to. So I just assumed I would never see Kurt Browning skate again. And then this was his farewell tour. So there was a lot of sentiment involved because he was absolutely, definitively one of my favorite skaters of all time, and like a figure in the sport that was hugely impactful to me and why I still love the sport. So it really meant a lot to me.
Let's talk more about Kurt here in a second. But first, let's give a quick rundown of just everybody who was involved with it. So like you said, you have Kurt Browning in his farewell tour. You have Nathan Chen, so you have reigning Olympic champion, and
which blew my mind. I was so excited.
Yeah, I mean that was one of those definite it's worth noting that like this was like a 5-hour drive from us, so we had to make a whole trip out of this in order to be able to go do this thing. The lineup that was on the show, it was can't miss because
yes, it was absolute.
Because it's Kurt Browning, it's Olympic reigning champion Nathan Chen, one of the greatest of all time. It's Jason Brown, greatest,
my heart.
Yeah, probably the greatest artistic skater of all time.
At least, yes, this generation. I'm gonna throw a flag on Paul Wiley right there. So
fair, but yeah, of the current generation, yes, for sure. Chalk and Bates, reigning world champions in ice dance, and one of our absolute favorites in all this. Alexa Knierim and Brandon Fraser, who are the world silver pairs team. They were last year's champions. Mm-hmm. Luna Hendricks, who is the 5-time Belgian champion,
but also now the 2-time world silver medalist.
Right. And a very exciting addition to this because she's been one of our faves over the last couple of seasons.
Absolutely. And then you also had, newcomers I think Ilya Malinin was on the tour last year, so maybe he's not as new, but still new in general. So you had Ilya Malinin, Quad God, which was its own experience in and of itself. And Isabella Vito, and this was her debut as part of it. So it was lovely to see both of them. Then Satoko Miyahara, who we were both extremely stoked to get to see in person, finally. And then I don't want to discount Alyssa Cisney.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that because I think
I feel weird even presenting it that way, but I feel like there's not enough talk about how great she is.
Yeah, and then also Piper and Paul.
Yes, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier.
The Canadian ice dance pair.
And world bronze medalists.
Yes, yeah. It's a stacked
ridiculously
of talent, largely American, but like you said, I mean, you had a team from Canada. I don't know if Satoko counts as legendary, but if you go back and just look at
Japan,
her, in Japan, like Japanese legend. If you look at just her like roster of medals and stuff from back in the day,
she's a superstar.
Yeah,
she's
massively decorated. I learned today that she is referred to by her fandom as the Tiny Queen.
I love that,
which is great because she's 5 foot tall. So she's this,
and she's definitely a queen.
Yeah. And then, like I said, you've got Belgium's Luna Hendricks, who has really come out as a real star over the last couple of years.
And then you have Canadians' national hero, out there hanging out, just making everybody's day. Yes. Sort of what it felt like.
So the thing with Kurt, for me,
do we want to unpack it for just a minute?
I do. I want to unpack all of the thing with Kurt here.
Well, let me preface it.
Sure.
So to give you a frame of reference, and this is maybe a little bit farther than I necessarily should go, but Kurt was also my version of if you are a teenage girl or boy or, whatever, however you identify, and you had your teenage crush, whether it was New Kid on the Block or a Backstreet Boy or Britney Spears or whomever, that was Kurt Browning for me. Obviously, far, far past that. But there's also this tied up nostalgia of he was my favorite skater. And I had a crush on him when I was like 13 years old. And I was also just overwhelmingly a supporter of his, which was always entertaining because my mom was like, but he's a Canadian, because she was very much the like root for the home team type. But she did come around to appreciating him. But in general, it's like during my heaviest, most deeply into figure skating time period, he was like peak, my favorite, no question. So that's, many, many years ago. And I have since had many other favorites that were kind of more top of mind, I guess. But there is a sentimental like spot that will always exist for me there. So, and I'm 100% aware that I am not alone in that. And it was so cool to be in an arena where I could feel that, where everybody had that like different variation on the story. And I should say everyone over a certain age, because there were a lot of kids who are probably like, who is this guy that they keep talking about like he's a god? But I just wanted to preface it with like why it meant a lot to me.
So for me, I watched figure skating a little bit with my mom in the 90s. And so I was aware of who Kurt Browning was and Scott Hamilton and Brian Brittano and people of that particular era. I will say that I did see a lot of like Stars on Ice when they would do broadcasts of them.
Sure.
Because they used to do that quite a bit. I think even into the 2000s, you'd still see at the end of the Stars on Ice season, there'd be like a broadcast version of it that they'd show on TV. And I watched this a lot when I was a kid and a teenager. And we saw them a few times when they were still, again, we're showing them. And maybe they still happen and we just haven't gotten them here.
No, they do not.
Okay.
In Canada, yes, but not here.
Okay. But the thing with Stars on Ice growing up, I always had the perception that it was a fun thing to watch, but kind of cheesy. And that was me as a teenager. And this is also the
I'm not going
90s.
to argue with you.
Yeah.
But I'm also going to embrace cheesy because I like it.
Oh, sure. But also it's just the flavor of the time, right? And
absolutely.
Like the stuff that was on it.
And I also think there was a misperception of people blended Stars on Ice and Ice Capades. Ice Capades was definitely more like kid focused. The purpose of Stars on Ice when it was created by Scott Hamilton, and this is I'm paraphrasing, so please forgive me. It was a generally like, we are skaters who want to skate adult programs for adults, and also kids, make it a family friendly event, but also not everything is Disney. And no offense to that part of the world of skating and entertainment, but it's something that was more well-rounded, that really allowed skaters that had turned at the time what they used to refer to as professional skaters, not just, there was amateur and professional delineation a lot more definitively back then. But once you were past your competitive days, you'd still get to skate exciting programs and, difficult programs and really show off your skills and not wear a costume or skate with a prince or a princess.
If you haven't seen Stars on Ice, whether you've not been to it in person or seen it on TV, it's kind of like a gala program, if you've seen those at the end of a competitive show. But structurally, at least the way this one ran, like you have basically two parts. There's a first part, first and second half with an intermission and a Zamboni, in the middle of it. And basically, like every single skater, for the most part, every single skater or pairs or dance team gets like a sequence like in both halves, which are either exhibition pieces, like say Jason Brown's Backstreet Boys routine that he did as his gala performance during the regular season. He did that as like his first program at this. Or you will get a variation on their competitive programs as one of them. So, and I say variation because it's usually the program that you recognize, but with a lot of the harder elements taken out of it.
It's watered down for sure. And Stars on Ice, and I would think anyone who's gotten this far in the conversation probably has at least an idea of what it's like. But I do appreciate it's one of the few places where you get to see a lot of these skaters come together in group numbers.
Yeah, that's the thing I was going to say next, is that alongside of that, there are group numbers where they come out and do sequences together, all with music and a very playful kind of aura about it.
It's not always perfect, and that's okay. There's something like, yes, seeing, a well choreographed like synchro team, you're seeing a lot of skaters who are kind of coming into an existing tour in our case, and learning alongside people that have been doing this for weeks or months at this point. You can see a little bit of the choppiness, but that's part of the charm to me. It isn't flawless. they're humans, and it's kind of fun to get to see that.
This show started off with a group sequence to oh my gosh,
all these things that I've done.
Yeah, by the Killers,
yeah.
Which is a great track for an arena of people to get into. And it started off with Nathan.
Yeah.
So Nathan comes out as your kind of marquee guy, starts the show, and then, you know, everybody else comes out and joins and becomes part of a number. And yeah, it's loose in places because it's not a ice capade troupe that's practicing this to do this one show, you know, for 6 months at a time or something like that. So you have people who are coming in and out, and you could see at times with like Nathan where he's kind of spotting the person next to him to make sure that he's doing the right thing in the sequence or whatever. But again, that is part of the charm, and it is really fun. It's so entertaining to see people that you never saw on ice otherwise come out and do bits and pieces together. I mean, the team, you know, the ice pairs and ice dance teams are typically together, you know, all the time through it and stuff. But like, for instance, Piper and Paul, for their second piece, did their Thank God I'm a Country Boy gala,
John Denver.
Gala performance. And during it, Jason and Satoko came out together, dressed also in kind of cowboy outfits, and did like a little like side dance routine during their gala performance.
I think they were all sort of doing a square dance together, but it was adorable.
It's worth noting that like Satoko Miyahara always seems like the single nicest, most game person. Japan churns out amazing skaters who are very cool, right?
Yes.
That are like, that always just seem like super fun. Like, watch anything on social media from Kaori Sakamoto, and if you don't think she's the most adorable human being on the planet, I don't know what's wrong with you, because she's just so fun. But Satoko seems like that skater that like everybody seems to love.
Yeah.
Just universally just is adored. And you get why when you see her going out there and just being so playful and goofy. And again, it's a joy just to see those people on ice together that you would not normally have had that opportunity to do so.
Absolutely. Speaking of Satoko, I mean, I'm not sure if we need to talk about every program, but it's more like each skater. Satoko really took my breath away. Like, I know how good she is. I've seen her before. I'm aware. I adore her. But seeing her in person, and her programs just had a different tone than everyone else's. They told a story a little bit more, and I was just absolutely in love with every second she was on the ice.
When you have a show like this that's so stacked with your faves, I think you go in kind of expecting to be like, oh, I'm going to be blown away by, you know, my favorite people on this, whether it's Chalk and Bates or Nathan Chen or Jason Brown. The surprise for me coming out of it was that the most impressive performances to me, the ones that really, really got me, were, like you said, Satoko Miyahara's, both of her performances, they were so lyrical and expressive and dynamic and just gorgeous. She's so interesting because she's that person that, like, she is so sunshiny and smiling and laughing all of the time. And then she drops into these big, dramatic, emotive performances. Like you said, it was breathtaking. I was just overwhelmed by like how good she was. And I don't know why this is a surprise. It just wasn't what I expected. But both performances from Knierim and Fraser were mind-blowing.
Yeah, I love Alexa and Brandon. But again, to your point, on a program where you have several of my very favorite skaters of all time in like Kurt Browning and Jason Brown and Nathan Chen, to be fair, too, I was excited most to go see, you know, them specifically. And I came out of it absolutely loving all of them, but being kind of more excited by Knierim and Fraser. And pair skating is really, really exciting when it's good to watch live. Watching Brandon and Alexa here was that reminder of it, because on TV, you can obviously see that like it's dangerous. It's when it's great, it's thrilling. But when you see it live, it is absolutely incomparable. I don't know. There is something remarkable whenever it's being done really well. And they show different sides of themselves. They were faster in person than I had even realized. And just how big all of their moves were. They were just on fire. And I was really, really impressed.
There was something that struck me. One was just that the throws and lifts that they were doing just in person and close enough and at the level we were at, where, again, it's just a very different experience. But there was a part where they did the lift and they skated by us. And Brandon has Alexa in the air. He's straight armed, got her soaring through the air right in front of us. And not for nothing, I'm 6'1", right? Like, I'm not a small guy, but the scale of that, when you have Brandon, who is very tall, and then has Alexa way up in the air, and he's straight, and it looks effortless. Like, he doesn't look like he even
Did you notice the
feels it.
smile?
Oh, I noticed the smile. He had a look on his face like, yeah, I'm doing this, and it was definitely a flex. And they're supposed to sell.
Way. Yeah.
But I think during the regular season, we were so caught up with Mira and Kihara from Japan when it came to the pair stuff, because they were our favorite of anything all season long. And while Alexa and Brandon were terrific, I think they always just paled a little bit to us. Well, and also they,
I know that they're silver medalists as well. I get it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Riku and Rahara beat them every time too.
Yeah.
So, I think that it all kind of leans together, but I think
not every time, just gonna put a pin in that one.
Oh yeah. World team.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good point. Before in the rest of the competitive season,
yes,
otherwise, Riku and Ryuichi were undefeated. Alexa and Brandon did both their programs from the competitive season. Or Shallow the gala performance?
That Shallow the gala performance.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I forgot about that. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So they did their gala performance, and they did the Stranger Things. Both of them were outstanding.
Absolutely. Like, I could not agree more. I was completely taken with them. What I will say about people that are using their competitive programs, Piper Gillis and Paul Poirier did their Evita program, like a watered down version of it, for sure, which was gorgeous. Yeah, absolutely gorgeous. But I got to admit, I kind of liked the silly John Denver medley better, which was a weird thing to see. Like, I have loved that Evita program all season, but even in person, I don't know what happened, but it's like, it was beautiful to watch and I loved it. But them being silly, I think I get it now. They're very warm. Watching Paul and Piper, they feel so almost like cozy to watch. They're fast as hell and brilliant at what they're doing. But I don't know, there's just like this warm fuzzy element to me whenever I'm watching them. So watching them do this big dramatic piece was gorgeous, but watching them do something silly felt so much more in the pocket.
Yeah.
Where I was like, oh, that's why you wore those crazy orange costumes at the Olympics, and I didn't get it then, but now I get it. Yeah,
that was one of the things in seasons past. I would never been that impressed with them because I always felt they were just a little too goofy for the competitive level. And then this season they came out with the Evita program, which started out just mind blowing and then just kind of lost steam as the season went along. But yeah, when you really see them perform, you can tell that it seems like their biggest joy comes from the more tongue-in-cheek kind of silly thing, and they perform it so well, and they always kill at galas because they're immensely entertaining. And they're just, you can't help but love them. There's just something really, really lovely about them. But also going into another person who a lot of them used competitive programs, but I don't know if anyone had the moment of energy that Ilya Malinin did whenever the whole auditorium just went boom, boom, at the beginning of his second program, which was his long program from this whole season. Because at the exact moment that sound happened, you felt an entire audience go, oh shit, is he going to do the quad axel? It was, which he did not. He didn't. Spoiler. Yeah, he just did a triple axel. But adjust. Yeah. But yeah, he went into that setup and you could tell the entire audience went it was an audible Yeah. It was interesting. So the thing about Ilya at this, so he did his gala performance as his first piece, and then he did his long program as his second. And there's still a lot of rough edges on his skating. Absolutely. But I mean, obviously, you watch the kid jump in competition and it's insane. In person, it's nuts. It really is. And it's not just his jumps, it's his acrobatics in general, period. He is doing things like that we saw him do, in some of the competitions, things that are like becoming signature Ilya moves, like nobody else does. But it's getting to an explosive level where, the artistry still needs refinement, but he tore that place down with his long program. Absolutely, he did. It was a wild thing. And he cut out about a 2-minute section in the middle to keep it to about a 2.5-minute program.
So it wasn't in its entirety, but you still had, I don't know, 4 or 5 triples, which when it comes to exhibition, including a triple axel is kind of a novelty. So seeing him, and he did several in both programs, I think. But in any case, he did a bunch of triple axels there. But if you've seen him on social media, you know he can do that all damn day. It's wild to hear, like, the first time he comes out, the audience, the decibel level went through the roof. It's not that I was shocked by the level of enthusiasm that audience had for him, but you have really, really notable people. And then you bring out Ilya Malinin and it's like the whole place is going to riot at any moment. And then he starts skating and you're like, do you deserve this? And then you're watching it. I'm like, okay, you got the skills. I knew it already, but now I know it on a different scale. Like seeing the height, the speed, and just the in general excitement. And he's a really compelling person on the ice for being such a slight young guy. It's like, it's an energy.
Ilya is fairly awkward off the ice, but he has the charisma on it.
Yeah.
And he's starting to own it. And in particularly that second program at this Stars on Ice event, where you could feel like he owns the arena. He owns every eye in here, and the energy level is palpable. When you talk about the excitement that the place had, and of course, you know, this is a show where there's a lot of young people, which is great to see.
It was.
Because sometimes when you see skating on TV, the audience feels like it's a lot of people with gray hair. And I say that as a guy with a gray beard, right? But sometimes it feels like the audience for these shows is always like in its 50s.
And it's aging out.
Yeah. And you're not seeing enough young people versus going to Stars on Ice. There were tons of kids there. There were tons of teenagers and young adults and families and stuff. And so all of that was really, really nice to see. And so it's not surprising that some of the new young stars are going to be the ones that are capturing the minds and attention of that younger audience. But to put it in perspective, when Ilya got his big ovation, my Apple Watch gave me a hearing alert of the decibel had raised too high to be safe anymore.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and I'm somebody with hearing damage. And so there were several times during the show where I actually had to plug my right ear because I would go crackly and I wouldn't be able to hear. So, and that's just a thing I have to do. But it would in particular happen during his stuff. Him and Kurt and Nathan, the three of them would typically get the biggest overall ovations.
Yeah.
But yeah, not for nothing. Ilya is obviously the star to watch in U.S. men's figure skating, but this really sold that in a way I guess I wasn't quite expecting.
I expected a big ovation. I expected him to be Ilya and amaze me with his jumps. I didn't expect him to raise to that level of showmanship, even without the same degree of artistry as pretty much anybody else on that show. Like, I would absolutely put him as, like, this is not to rank, and I feel weird saying it out loud, but it's like, if you were talking about just level of artistry, he's going to be at the bottom of that pack of everyone at that show. However, when it came to excitement, confidence, and just overall performance value, he's towards the top.
Yeah.
It really interesting. Again, energy is the only way I can describe it. And there's a specific thing that he did at the end of his second program where he jumped into what looked like a sit spin position, but it was 7 feet in the air and just did like a 360 and then flipped and then came down in almost like a Spider-Man pose. I don't know what to call that, but it was amazing to see on ice.
His first sequence, he had something that it was almost like if you took like a comic idea of what like a kung fu kick looks like, where like you jump and you have one leg straight out and the other one kind of bent underneath it. He jumped up into that kind of position and then did a full 360 with it and then came down into another element. And it looked like he was floating in the air. Like the spin was so clear. It didn't, it wasn't like it blurred. It looked like he was slow in the air, but he was in the air too long. And I just remember watching that being like, how is that even possible? Like that is insane. And he just kept doing things like that over and over again, things where it was like nobody else at this show, who are some of the best in the world that have ever, done this, are not doing things that this kid can do. Right.
And I know that like traditionalists and just even my own, I don't know, ingrained understanding of skating, I'm like, is that skating? And that's an argument that I see a lot online. Like acrobatics plus skates, it's cool, but is it skating?
Hell yeah, it is.
And I agree. I'm with you. I'm on team, like, you know what? It's all part of a performance. And I like that he's trying different things. And I mean, I'm a big critic of like the kicks that a lot of the men in skating are doing, where they have to incorporate some random kick because all of them saw Nathan Chen and Yuzuru Hanyu do them, and they did them brilliantly. And now they're like, well, I'm going to do what Nathan and Yuzu did. And I'm like, guys, you're not Nathan and Yuzu.
Good on them for trying. But yeah, we saw it in the regular season. We saw a lot of dudes throwing some weak ass kicks in
They
there.
were some really bad ones. And not all of them. Like, but you look at Kevin Amos, he can do them all day.
They're incredible.
All day and forever. I'm never going to complain about some acrobatics from Kevin Amos. But if you're going to do them well, so do Yamamoto.
That's fair. In reference to this, like, and I wish I knew the account offhand, but I saw a figure skating account post a thing the other day on Instagram that really hit home for me. And they made the comment that sometimes skating, as the sport is treated right now, is a lot like a dog show. And in the sense that when you have dog shows, that the dogs are not competing against each other. They are competing against a standard ideal of what it is to be a dog in their class.
This is an interesting analogy.
Yeah. So they're like, okay, if you go in and you're a Saint Bernard, you're not really competing against the other dogs. You're competing against the standard of what a perfect Saint Bernard is.
Right.
And whether or not this dog that's in here measures up to whatever that standard is. And then it's to the taste of the judges, which dog they just happen to like the best. Right. So if you look at skating over the years, there's somewhere along the lines, this idea of who the ideal skater in men's and women's and pairs and dance is. And then everybody is being measured against this idea of what perfection, or what the ideal is. And so what happens sometimes because of that is that you have judges that are like, well, let's say back in the day, we'll, whenever possible, award everything to Gracie Gold over, say, like an Ashley Wagner, because Gracie fits more towards the platonic ideal of what a women's figure skater is. And while there's something to be said for creating that measurement for what is good, at the same time, it removes the individual identity of who skaters are and allowing them to develop things that are good. I mean, you go back and look at like Surya Bonali.
Surya Bonali.
Yeah. Who was, again, one of those skaters, had a lot of rough edges, but also had a very specific identity, and it was not one that the judges liked. So she could very rarely live up to that ideal of what they thought she should be. And so anyway, my long way around with it is that it's looking at somebody like Ilya, who's going out there and being like, his skills, he's maybe not the perfect artist. He has time to develop into somebody who has more artistry, but that acrobatic element, that sheer excitement, that is intrinsically Ilya Malinin, should not be watered down to fit an ideal standard of what this sport is, to my mind. No,
I see. I totally see where you're coming from there. And I am with you. I like individual identity. I think it's the trouble that skating has, I mean, honestly, philosophically, where you have the breakdown of a subjective sport in the sense that what you're describing is what the components in some regard should be.
Yeah.
Not entirely, because there are technical elements of it, whether it's the edge work or the overall quality centering of a spin, say, just for example. But the technical side of things, whenever you're just looking at, was something completely rotated? Did someone jump on the correct edge for it to equal this? Because like there's a lot of controversy around like Shoma Uno's quadruple flip. Is it really a flip? Is it a flutz? What is it?
The flutz, yeah.
But it's beautiful and it's a quad. It's just, and it's Shoma. So not many people are going to complain because he's amazing. And he's amazing in most everything else he does. But that element, you know, causes the ripple of like, okay, that's not a style thing. That's a technical thing. But to what you're describing, whenever it comes to the whatever is considered the artistic merit of a skater and how that is judged is really difficult, because skating has always wanted to keep itself in a box of like, here is what skaters should look like you're describing with Gracie Gold. There's plenty of reasons why Gracie Gold beat Ashley Wagner. No offense to either of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
On a technical level. But in terms of what kind of an artist each one was and who skated better on what day, and by better, I mean just had the more compelling program that that's all subjective. And Gracie, to your point, does definitely fit the box of what skaters were supposed to be. But I think that's partly why we see a Gracie now, even now, who has just struggled through her own evolution. And it's beautiful to see that she's, come so far and ideally just been skating for herself all these years. And I feel like we've really digressed.
Yeah.
But Ashley Wagner doesn't skate anymore, but was always herself.
Yes.
You can always give it to Ashley, whether you loved her skating or you didn't, that she was inherently herself out there. That's what I loved about her, but it wasn't always rewarded. So Malanen has some of that. And for better or worse, he's definitely put his foot in his mouth a lot recently, but he's a kid. And those things happen whenever you're a kid. And all of this pressure and fame and attention has just come your way. So circling back, seeing him live and feeling that in just an arena for a show, I can't imagine what it has to feel like at a Skate America or a US Nationals with bigger crowds, with the pressure of competition. I'm just really curious to see what happens with him. I really want him to continue and to succeed and to thrive. But man, that's a lot.
Yeah, it is a ton. I want to transition from that then into Isabel Levito.
Yeah, same idea.
This was her Stars on Ice debut.
And it was extremely cute to see all the little girls who were freaking out about her.
Yes, there was definitely a lot of little girls who this is their new hero because she is the current U.S. skate darling in the women's side of things. I will say that, like, when you talk about like explosive Ilya, Isabeau doesn't quite have that kind of like enormous thing on the ice.
She's lovely.
She's lovely and she's very cute. And I mean, okay, her first performance, I don't think I'd seen from her before. It was to Madonna's Material Girl. And it's in this like sparkly outfit. And it's her styled and performing in a way I've never seen her do before.
Which was fun.
It was really fun. For one thing, it's super flirty. Like she's flirting like crazy with the crowd.
Which feels weird. I'm not going to lie.
I mean, because she's 17? 16, 17?
Yeah.
Sure.
But it was cute.
It's cute.
It was very chaste.
Yes. I mean, it's
not Katarina Witt flirting.
Right. I mean, it's a flirty program, but in a very fun, very family friendly way.
But she was definitely flirty with the audience.
Yeah.
Yes.
But it's not a version of her that we've seen before. It's to see her kind of vamp a little bit.
Yes.
And that was entertaining and obviously was allowing her to get out there and do something that's different than what we've seen her do before.
Yeah. And I feel bad saying that it felt odd, but it's mostly because her style is such a classical style that watching her skate something that's fun is both delightful because it's like, oh, I'm glad to see you kind of loosen up and have a good time. But her style didn't really loosen up to me. So I still felt like it was just, I don't know, the reminder of that she's a kid.
Yeah.
And she's trying to evolve herself, which I really, really did appreciate. And it was entertaining. Her second program was Swan Lake. And it was like, oh, this is Isabeau.
Yeah, this was more like, what you would expect from Isabeau.
And I love it when people subvert expectations. It's just, I feel like the first program didn't work quite as well yet because she hasn't figured out how to be that version of herself yet. She's a teenage girl. I didn't know who the hell I was at 16, so I'm not blaming her. But I think it's great that she's pushing it and trying.
Yeah, I got the impression that probably the Material Girl program, if that's, because I don't remember seeing that as a gala from her at any point.
I don't remember.
So I wonder if it's a fairly new routine.
Yeah.
Honestly, the Swan Lake one from later doesn't stand out to me very much.
I mean, if I'm being honest, neither one of them. I mean, there was a lot of really great skating.
Yeah.
And hers were fun.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say memorable.
Yeah. But what is memorable about her on it was her jumps were gorgeous. I wasn't in person. I wasn't so aware of her crazy knee bends or anything.
I was on like the last jump she did because everything else she did a lot of double axles. That's the thing.
Yeah.
And all of her double axles, her approach is forward. So that it's not as strange. So a lot of the jumps she picked to do were her edge jumps that don't have that big reach. That is very awkward. She did one at the very end of the second program. And it's nice to hear that you didn't notice it. I'm a nitpicker. So I'm just like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Because the rest of the program, like her speed is much better in person, like, and she's obviously improved it a lot. She was delightful. I don't mean to be critical. I think right now, just watching her evolve is just interesting.
Yeah, but the quality of her skate is undeniable, and
her spins were amazing.
Oh yeah, her spins were fantastic. We talk about speed though. We mentioned earlier that Alyssa Cisney is on this, and Alyssa was
two-time U.S. champion. Alyssa Cisney,
yeah, two-time U.S. champion. When you first really got me into skating back in the day, it was in Alyssa Cisney's era.
Mm-hmm.
And I always really liked her. I thought she was a compelling skater and she was very enjoyable to watch. It was kind of interesting having her on this. Like, that she's, to a degree, she's on there because she's married to Kurt Browning. And so it's kind of a package deal in a way.
I mean, to be fair, she was on Stars on Ice for a long time without him, but she hasn't been on it in a while. So yeah, on this particular tour, I think she was brought back because getting a twofer.
Yeah. And it was pretty clear that from an audience perspective, I feel like a lot of the younger crowd just didn't know who she was.
Yeah.
Which is to be expected. She's been out of competition for quite a long time. And she was the one skater who, she had a program in the first half, not in the second. She was in all the group routines and stuff, but she just didn't have like a featured thing in the second half. And she doesn't really have jumps anymore.
And she may in other programs, but not in this particular show.
Yeah. But what's worth noting about the program that she did in the first half is that, one, she is insanely fast.
Yes.
I don't think anybody else on the ice was on par with how quick she is, like how she covers ground. And she is still an extremely impressive artistic skater.
Oh, yeah. She's artistic and technical. It's the difference between like solo ice dance. Like, it was a gorgeous program to watch without a jump, and you never missed it. She performed, she owned an arena, and I loved that, like, a lot of people, like, to your point, didn't really recognize her. Like, she had more of the, like, a polite applause, but almost like a tepid one, where, because, you have all the screaming for Ilya, because a lot of the people weren't as familiar with her. But at the end of her program, you would not have known that. Like, a huge ovation. Whenever someone's good, you know it. Yeah. And she is excellent. So it was really lovely to see her out there just show off her edges, her line. The best spiral we saw all night was hers.
Extraordinary.
It was half of the rink. It was gorgeous. And extension for days. So it's like, as a skating purist, you couldn't not love her. It was just beautiful, beautiful skating.
Yeah, the flexibility, the positioning, the edge work, everything. I mean, it was, and again, I don't think you'd notice it so much watching it on TV, but being there in person and just seeing how fast she was traveling through it. Because we'll note that about during the regular competitive season, that there are some skaters that seem to kind of lag a little bit with speed and they need to pick it up in order to just like, and Isabeau was one of those people that she needed to grow that as she, got into this past season. And it was obviously an area she worked on. Cisney's been out of the game competitively for a long time, but the motor is still there because holy crap, she is so fast. But yeah, extremely compelling, very, very enjoyable.
Yeah. And also enjoyable. I mean, everybody was, but it was just fun to see Luna Hendricks there because I felt like her sparkle and there was something shiny about her. And it's really fun. I feel like Stars on Ice and her are a very, very good match.
Yes.
And you could tell that she loved being part of all the group numbers. I don't know. There was something effortless and effervescent about her out there. One
of the things that I've adored over the last couple of years, as far as like, seeing Luna for the first time or becoming aware of her, I should say, for the first time, and then seeing her be included on a lot of these tours. She's done Japan, she did Canada, she's now, in the US doing this. And she clearly gets along with a lot of the international ones. We talked a lot about after the championships, like the interactions with her and Cowrie and, all the podium stuff with them, like how cute it all is. But Luna is that person that I really enjoy watching, whether it's on the competitions or particularly like with social media, because this is somebody who clearly loves doing what she's doing and is so grateful to be surrounded by these other amazing people that she gets to share it with. You get that sense this is a person living their best life.
Yeah.
That she's been traveling all over the world doing this show, getting to do all these, if you watch their Instagrams and stuff, you'll see them between shows, like exploring the cities where they're at and going and doing cool touristy stuff. And doing it in kind of little subunits of different people that are sometimes like, there's a really, really cute post that's Piper and Luna and Satoko out exploring. I don't remember if it was Seattle or somewhere. They're on scooters and Luna is on one of the scooters and Satoko's on it behind her, holding on to her. And it's just the cutest thing in the world. Like, it's just so adorable. So I love seeing something like that with somebody like Luna, who's still just in her early 20s, who is going around having this incredible experience, has been fully embraced by this group of people, and then goes out there and is just a fantastic skater. Yeah,
she's super fun. And it's worth noting too that like you have all of these people who are, young up and comers. And then you have, we're in Chicago, and I'm pretty much rushing my way directly into a bad segue to start talking about Jason Brown.
I have a beat I want to mention about Luna before you do that, which is just that one of the most entertaining reactions I remember of the night from the crowd was just when Luna came out for her second routine. She's got this sort of like black cat suit that's sort of a deep V, and like it's a little of a saucier outfit than a lot of the other things in the show. And so she came out on ice in it, and I just heard a young woman a couple of rows behind us just go, "Wow, she's really hot." And I don't know why. I found it very, very entertaining. It was very funny. But yes, both of Luna's performances were really, really entertaining. But I think even more so it was watching her in all of the group numbers, because she was just living for it.
Yeah. Someone who also is living for it was Jason Brown. See how I keep wrapping it back to his two programs were so Jason Brown. It was ridiculous, because you had him as in his Backstreet Boys exhibition number, which was hilarious and super fun, and had the crowd in the palm of his hand from the second he was out there, to his second half performance of a modified version of his long program from this season, to Josh Groban's The Impossible Dream, which was a program that, like, it's Jason Brown. I'm always going to love it, but it was not my favorite music selection. But in person, whole different world, where I'm like, nope, never mind. You win, Jason Brown. You always win. He was so in it, and it all made sense. I'm like, just go, be you. It's perfect. Just getting to him to see him do splits in person, of all things, like, unbelievable. Like, the speed, the carriage, the way he goes into a jump is like nobody else, because it is so effortless. It's part of the choreography. It just feels so light. He just floats up and floats down, and I could go on for days.
When you people talk about, making it look easy, and like Johnny and Tara will talk about that a lot during competitions, that like that's part of the test of like how good something is that when it looks easy, it's like when you watch, Ilya do a quad axel, and he most of the time makes it look like it's just the easiest thing in the world. And you're like, that's the hardest jump in history, and you make it look simple. That's nuts, right? That's a sign of quality. And that's everything Jason does.
It's everything he does.
Everything, like front to back, he just makes it look like he was physically designed in a lab to do that thing.
Yeah.
And much like Luna, I felt like he glowed the most in a lot of the group numbers, because Jason's sense of play and generosity and just the effervescent personality that he has, it's there in every performance, but it so comes out on the ice with a bunch of other people, where he gets to play and be silly and be extra as hell. And it was dynamite.
No, it was super good. And then I admit, like, I think the thing going into this, we each had, I think, the people that we were the most excited from the past few years to see. And yours would be Maddie and Evan. So Madison Jack and Evan Bates.
Yeah.
And mine was Nathan Chen. I was so drawn into the competition between him and Yuzu Ruhanyu, the evolution that men's skating made because of them both. But Nathan, in the past like 5 years, has just been that person I've just really loved seeing grow and grow and grow. So just getting to see him here and see how amazing his jumps are still a year into his, not really a retirement, but kind of, but maybe not. I don't think he's been definitive, but still an amazing spinner, jumper. I think it was actually his spins that impressed me the most.
They were wild.
Yeah. And it was something that I've always appreciated in watching him, skate at any time, but seeing it in person, I was like, just so much quality and also just delight. Like, you can see him looking out into the audience, just like, to same Luna energy of like living his best life. And after watching so many years of him in competitive mode where he is so analytical and serious and fairly intense and reserved, seeing him be loose and happy and playful and obviously just having the time of his life, which just like, it just made me warm and fuzzy. It was great.
Exactly all of that. He is such a game face competitor. And we've gone back and rewatched a whole lot of his stuff recently in preparation for going to the show. And you just see like he has those moments where he cracks and, you know, shows his enthusiasm on the ice. But for the most part, like he is in it to win it. And, you know, and it's just all game face. And yeah, during this whole show, there was just so much joy. It was obviously a person who loves being on the ice, loves doing what he does. You made a comment about before this, you know, we were recording this, but about how there are certain spins that you don't see in competition much anymore because they don't really have a big point value, and they're just sort of considered a choreographic element rather than an individual piece. But they're always crowd pleasers because they just look amazing. Scratch spin, right. Mm-hmm. And we saw a lot of those on display at this.
Absolutely.
Where you got to see people be like, oh wait, I'm great at this, but I don't really get to do them in competition anymore.
Well, they're fun and they're like super fast. The blur spin or, you know, scratch spin, they don't do it in competition as much anymore because usually they're trying to do as many different positions and a number of revolutions for each position to get the maximum value of points. So you lose out because of all this technical jargon of the excitement of a big program ending with a big scratch spin that blurs out, you know, to the point where you can't see them. And Nathan Chen, of everyone we saw, definitely had the ones where you're like, Jesus.
Yeah, they're spectacular.
They're amazing and crowd pleasing and beautiful to watch. And it is a shame that we don't get them more often because they're a great, even if you want to think of them as a choreographic element, they're a great choreographic element.
Yeah.
They're super fun.
And also just being 10 feet away from Nathan doing a jump.
Yeah. It tells you a big story.
Yes. I mean, it's so explosive.
The pop.
Yes.
That he gets is just different. Again, like talking about Jason, how they're just part of the choreography and it just flows. And that's what makes his jumps his jumps. The height and the explosiveness of Ilya's is his. Nathan's, it's just the pop up into the jump and the speed of rotation that you're just like, and they're just perfect. It's like, how do you stay that straight in the air? It's like poing, like straight up. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a truly remarkable thing to see in person. And again, it's watching all of these different skaters who are all so very different on the ice and seeing how different it is really for each one of them, their technique, their way they handle things and whatever. It's so striking.
It makes me think of what we were talking about in terms of Madison Chalk and Evan Bates and the Twizzles. Getting to see theirs in person, it was like, okay, maybe, and again, I haven't seen an ice dance competition ever in person, so I can't claim to know what others look like. Like I've never seen Gabby Papadakis and Guillaume Cizeron in person, but I have now seen Maddie and Evan do their Twizzles side by side, and man, they are spectacular.
It is otherworldly to see them move that quickly, that much in sync, and that close together.
Yes. You know, and that's just one element. So much of their programs, like they just sell so hard. I don't know that anybody makes better eye contact. They're out there like everything is projected to the rafters. Both of them. It
was the reminder again, though, watching it that, like, I mean, Maddie is the face because, I mean, holy God, I mean, that woman is so beautiful and so,
yes,
like a ray of light burning its way across the front
yes.
row of the crowd because she's just so eye-catching and so dynamic. But Evan's skating skills are bar none, like top notch. I don't know, it's just watching it where you can see so often that, like,
security.
Yes, they hold together as well as they do because Evan is anchoring all of the things that they do. She is the show, but he is the tent pole holding it up. I mean, which makes them an incredibly dynamic team.
It does. Like you never feel half a second of doubt with him in anything that he's doing. Watching some of their lifts in person and just seeing how quick he's moving to get her into that position. And this is not taking anything away of what she's doing, but the total competence of watching him. That's what I thought of someone who was just, if you're looking for peak competence, that is Evan Bates.
They were a joy to watch. But one of the things that really stood out to us was they did their Let's Dance program. And
her flippin' dress.
This is a crazy thing to say, but like you hear sometimes that the outfits that they wear at these, you know, these performance outfits are really, really expensive, right? And sometimes they look at very clearly that they're very expensive. Sometimes they look a little drab or a little goofy, but I don't think I've ever seen an outfit, competitive or otherwise, that looks like the outfit that she wears for the Let's Dance sequence in its just sheer drama and excitement and eye-catchingness.
Yeah, it's amazing to see in person. The movement, the color, the shine. It's like, I don't usually get excited necessarily about costumes unless they're like particularly well tailored or something, but hers was just special. That is a special dress.
Yeah, that's like a put it in the Hall of Fame kind of thing, but put it on something that moves, because you need to see how it moves and how it catches the light. Also, you know, we're normally seeing it in competition, so you're seeing it with all the house lights up, rather than seeing it
in spotlight.
And in spotlight, it on her is mesmerizing.
Yeah, it's hypnotic. Well, I think that takes us to the only person we haven't talked about, which is Kurt, to bookend this a little bit.
Yeah.
Both of his programs were almost more like compilations of greatest hits. If you're not a deep cut fan, you wouldn't necessarily know what he's doing. But as a deep cut fan, there was a few particular movements I could see him doing where I was just like, oh, I know what this is from that program and this is from that program. But he blended it in such a way where unless it didn't matter that you didn't know. If you knew, you knew. So that was kind of cool. But they were both more just, I don't know, just generally goodbyes. There was some kind of improvisational quality to it that Kurt's always kind of had. It's delightful because you feel like it is someone who, number one, still commands an ice rink in a way that I don't know that many others have. He holds an audience in the palm of his hand. He can make you laugh. He can make you feel. It is more entertainer than anything else. And it's really, I was so happy you got to experience that, even in not getting to see one of his signature, if you will, programs. There was something very genuine and raw to them, but that's kind of what I loved about him.
To me, and seeing this, my first time seeing him, live, I guess probably the last time seeing him live, which is kind of sad after seeing how good he is, but not for nothing. This dude is 56 years old. And at 56 years old, he was throwing triples.
Yeah.
Jumps that looked terrific, fully rotated, beautifully executed jumps. And one of my other favorite moments of this whole thing. So I'd been following this stuff online and I had seen that he had been prepping backflips, which were something he used to do all the time back in the day. He stopped doing them after a certain point. Again, 56 years old, but he was doing them and landing them. But Wendy had not seen those things.
I had not.
Did not know that was coming.
No.
So he was doing one of these routines and he's going through, kind of ending off the sequence. And then he goes into the setup for it, like straight down the center of the ice. And I was like, oh yeah, it's coming. And I just hear her behind me go, what? No way. And then and then right in front of us, he throws the backflip in there. Not perfect.
It's not as perfect as Nathan's, because Nathan threw like 3 or 4.
Yeah, Nathan can chuck those all day.
But Nathan's also like 23.
Right, exactly. Again, 56 years old and he's backflipping on ice.
He still was fully rotated.
Yes. And just you like freaking out because you had no idea it was coming was so delightful for me, because I did know it was coming and it was amazing.
What was really funny about that is like I've never really been like the biggest backflip person. Like it's a fun moment as an audience member, but it's not anything I like actively look forward to. But the unexpected, like thinking you're 56 and you're throwing a backflip, my brain just broke a little bit in that moment in a good way. I was absolutely delighted and really impressed.
It was a flex for a guy who's like at the end of his professional career after, a really long competitive career, one of the GOATs of the sport. Mm-hmm. And to be out there, putting on such a performance, but also, dude still got hops, still has the backflip, says all the charm. That guy's footwork
has always been the best.
Insane. To be able to see that up close and to see the way he does his footwork sequences. And we've seen terrific stuff from Nathan and Jason and a number of other people, especially over the last few years. But I really don't know that I've seen anybody ever do it better.
Thank you. Welcome welcome to my world.
It really was spectacular.
It is. He can still do it. And it was a really amazing thing to still get to see one more time. Because I mean, I was at shows where he was doing, if you're an OG fan like me, like you'll understand if you've gotten to see Brick House Live, or Antares, I believe is what the name of one of the Tragically Hip songs that he did back in the day. And, you know, and obviously like his legendary competitive, like Casablanca, it's like, there's so many things that you can point to and be like, these programs were definitive in their time period. Like they defined a sport. To get to see him still being able to do so much of that stuff at his age was, God, it feels cheesy to say the word inspiring, but kind of as a person who is middle-aged, I was like, yeah,
I mean,
good job.
Me as somebody who's 45 and, you know, gets up out of my office chair and I'm like, you know, grabbing my back and being like, oh, you know, and then I'm seeing, you know, Kurt throwing backflips and doing triples and stuff. And I'm like, okay, I need to get my butt back in the gym. You are now my inspiration for repairing myself and trying to get myself in some sort of fighting shape, because it's amazing.
It was. And it was also, I mean, so much of the show really was dedicated to him.
Yeah, it was a send off for him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I do wonder if like the younger, like I know from being in that room that like anyone over a certain age genuinely appreciated that. And you could tell no matter what the age, everybody was enjoying what he was doing because he's just fun. But in terms of like at the end of the first act, there is kind of a more specific send off program that is very much centered around him. And I think it's well placed because it's in the end of the first act, so that the second act, you know, you just get more joyful, fun, yay, happy. But I wonder how people who didn't have that history with him felt about it. Like, were they bored? Did they not get it? I hope they just enjoyed what it was as a program, but not a thing I was thinking in the moment. But in retrospect, I'm like, okay, that could have been to a younger audience a bit heavy-handed and confusing. But I enjoyed it.
I can't speak for like the teen and under crowd that are in there, you know, but as a person who knows who he is, but it wasn't, you know, attached to him in a specific way.
Yeah.
I think one thing is that there's video screens around the ice and they have little package pieces that play in certain parts. And they did a couple of relatively short retrospective things about Kurt's career. And so I think if you're in there and you're old enough to like know anything about the sport, you know, just currently, you're going to watch this and go, oh, okay, here's a guy who did everything. He is the Nathan Chen of his era, you know. And I think that just the vibe and the way that they played everything out as far as the kind of send-off pieces for him, it kind of made me think almost like a play where, like, even if you're not super connected to him, I think the way they delivered it was like going to see a play and getting caught up in the emotion of the scene and the way all the other characters and stuff
That's
act.
good to hear. I like hearing that.
And again, you could maybe ask, you know, a 13-year-old in the crowd and they'd be like, oh, that was lame. I don't care about that old ball guy.
Ilya.
Right.
Why was that Ilya and everything?
No. Why is Isabel?
I'm very sorry if you're 13 and
I'm sorry. I don't mean to diss you there.
I'm just an old.
Yeah. And you probably don't talk with local fry, I hope. But yeah.
I've got some fry now.
Oh, well, yeah. But it's that like, oh my God. Anyway, I thought it was all great and it was very compelling. And there's a really fun, like long sequence. It's like a James Bond sequence that has everybody in it and has, you know, packaged video things, including some of the people who had been on the Canadian tour. So you had like Patrick Chan and I think Elvis Stoico, you know, doing things in it too, which was kind of cute. And so I think just to sum it all up, you know, after 8.5 hours of us discussing this, Stars on Ice, for me as a newbie, first time going to it, that is like the most serotonin I have experienced in years. Front to back, seeing it with a great crowd, you know, not like a full house necessarily, but a nice, you know, bottom two tiers packed, very excited, very energetic, good vibes, incredible performances. It was kind of like being at a concert that's also an athletic event, that's also, you know, a dance concert. Like it's all wrapped up into this thing, you know. So big music, great vibes, incredible performances. And then, you know, not for nothing, like when you have people that you see on TV all the time and then they're just in front of you, when you're close enough to see Piper's tan lines, like it's a different thing, right? Like you're just like, oh, this is crazy, you know, even down to some things like, you know, we talked about like Brandon and Alexa, who are also like strikingly more attractive in person than I would have expected. I mean, you expect that from, you know, Madison Chalk, but I don't know. There was just something about just seeing them in person where I was like, oh, like you don't sell as well on camera as you do in person. Mm-hmm. But yeah, the whole thing overall though was, I don't know, it was just like the best thing that we've done in so long. It
really was. I mean, to be very blunt, we don't go places much these days. At least we haven't in a long time. And by a long time, I mean, like, for lack of a better term, the before times.
Yeah. Before times, we traveled constantly.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
And there's part of me that misses it all the time. And then there's part of me that has become more homebody-ish. And I'm not sure how I feel about either of those things, truly. But making a 5-hour trip for this reminded me of why, number one, travel is fun, but also when it's worthwhile.
Yeah.
Like, and this was absolutely worth all of the time and money and effort to go and see, because I agree. It was something that I will not soon forget.
Yeah. And there's something, you know, an event has been good when, as the place is emptying out, people are still just kind of walking around the venue. People are chatting with each other. There's like kids out in the foyers, like doing sit spins and like trying out jumps and stuff. And so you're seeing all these other, like, you know, enthusiasts and whatever, maybe even next competitive somewhere down the line, kids throwing jumps afterwards. And it's kind of like when you've gone to a great concert and everybody's just lit up afterwards. It was very much that same kind of thing.
It was amazing. So we've been talking for quite a while.
Yeah. So yeah, that took us a while to cover. I think we should be really brief about some of the other stuff because it has gone on quite a while here.
And also we're pretty well past the season at this point.
Yeah.
The few things I do want to mention to just wrap up, since I'm not sure if we're going to do another one before the season starts up again. I hope we get to, and they might be a little bit different in format, but to sort of put a bow on the 2022-2023 season.
Yeah.
I feel like the best bow there could have been was the World Team Trophy, because that competition showed me what I'd like. I mean, not in every performance or every specific, well, some of the judging was questionable, but in terms of the tone. Not that I think every competition should have boas and giant sunglasses and all the crazy silly and the extraness, but the general good nature and competitiveness without crappiness, for lack of a better word, seeing so much camaraderie, internationally, and seeing people excel because of it. You want rivalries. You want, whether it's team-based or individual-based, those things move sport forward. And figure skating desperately needs something to move it forward again, because it is a sport that's struggling to keep and find a new audience desperately. And watching World Team Trophy and seeing Junwon Cha continue his, what I feel is like not only an upswing, but like a new reign.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like he is headed straight up. You have Junwon Cha from Korea and Haein Lee from Korea, who both took the Korean team in this World Team Challenge to a silver medal ahead of Japan. Totally unexpected. And no shade either to Yelim Kim, who had a rough short program, but had a really beautiful, incredible long program, who also supported all of that. I'm like, this is exciting to see, where it's at like you have a new team overall kind of building and moving up in the ranks. You have the incredible Japanese team who just is so deep that they just, keep throwing you new ones where you're like, you're amazing and you're amazing. You're also amazing. But to watch those two teams be rivals, but also supportive of each other. And then to see things like Ilya Malinin and Junwon Cha and Haein Lee all being buddy-buddy the whole time. And Kevin Amos and Jason Brown being so extra together, and which made me delighted. But it's all of that, the Italian team just being outrageous and silly.
So fun.
Feeling like you got to know Matteo Rizzo now. And I'm like,
yes,
you are so much sillier than I would have ever given you credit for.
Yes. But also an incredible skater.
Incredible and underrated. And I feel like he's now a solid top 10, top 8, could move into the top 6 if he could get a little bit more consistency. He's moving up, and it's exciting. It was really fun to see all of those things come together as a closing statement on a long, long season of ups and downs.
World Team, I think it's I'd never even heard of it until this season.
Well, it's a biannual
it's biannual, but
it's kind of a competition.
Well,
kind of.
It's the thing I think with it is that even this time, like, it wasn't broadcast, but
only on Peacock in the US.
Yeah, but you didn't get a live or terrestrial broadcast.
Was a stream.
And I feel like it's one of those things that, like, it's it's after Worlds, and it sort of feels a little tacked on, as far as, like, here's
and you can feel people being exhausted.
Oh yeah, everybody's tired. The season's kind of technically over, but there's reasons for them to stay in and do World Team. But the vibe of it is, like you said, is completely different from every other competition. Eventually we're going to do an episode that's all about, like, what we think, like, US skating needs to do to reinvigorate the fandom for
There's
it.
a lot of conversation about that right now.
A lot.
We'll get to that in another episode.
But one of the things that I think about all the time is that another thing that we're big fans of is American Ninja Warrior. And American Ninja Warrior is this thing that went from being, just this kind of niche hobby sport in the States after being, big over in Japan, to now being this phenomenon, right? It's absolutely huge. It gets broadcast, it gets a weekly broadcast on NBC, right? To get that kind of airtime tells you there's a ton of people watching it. The fan base is deep for it. It's inspiring new people to get into it all the time. And one of the things about Ninja Warrior that pushes it that way is the vibe, that it is not the competitive, toxic competition type sport that you see in a lot of team sports, whereas there's a lot of aggro kind of, there's the enemy, whatever kind of thing. Like, Ninja Warrior is all about the camaraderie of all the people who are in the sport together and supporting each other, and it's one of the lovely things about it. But also that there's this really fun vibe with it. World Team Trophy is the one thing I've seen that really felt like that.
Yeah, Ninja Warrior is a good analogy for it. It very much has that same vibe. You're still rooting on your team, and there still is competitiveness, like that. They're competitors. There should be. There better be. But you also feel like you're competing against yourself. You're competing for your country. And whenever you see something that is great, you're cheering for it. You're not like, well, screw you. You skated great. It's like, no, that's amazing, and I appreciate you. Do you want to win? Of course you want to win. But at the same time, it's not at someone's expense. It's because you were the best.
Yeah.
And that's the energy that this challenge had. But what was also exciting is the rising, like, if you want a rivalry, if that is more your thing, World Team had that too, because you really see Korea and Japan really starting to go neck and neck in several disciplines. Because, like, yes, the U.S. actually won World Team. They had the strongest team overall, and they were expected to win, and they did. And they were fantastic overall. But you watched, the expectation was this is a Japanese competition. They kind of own it. And you have Korea, who made a point of coming in like, oh no, nobody expects us to be here. And they did it. And it, to me, was a definitive, like, both performances from Junwon Cha felt like by the way, I'm coming for you. It's like him just evolving into who he's going to be. It was exciting. It made me remember, like, oh, we're now in a new quad. We're going towards Milano Cortina, next Olympics. And June is making his point, like, hey, I'm here. And I hope he can continue on it. I really think he will.
Basically, like, 4 continents to the end of the season, you saw Junwon Cha and Haein Lee suddenly just put their feet on the gas.
Yes.
You've always been expecting it from Junwon, and, like, you were just waiting for that star turn.
Yeah, waiting for him to have his breakthrough, his real breakthrough.
And it finally did. Haein was almost kind of a surprise. Always a good skater, but you've always been looking at Yelim Kim to kind of be their breakout.
At least in the past couple of years, yeah.
Yeah. And then Haein came out at 4 continents and just was amazing. And then straight through the rest of the season is just one of the highlights of the end game of the season.
Well, yeah, she went from 4 continents win, unexpected surprise win, to world silver medalist, to taking the World Team. There wasn't a singles title, but if there was, she would have had it on the women's side over Kaori Sakamoto.
Yeah.
And I love with all my heart Kaori Sakamoto, but Haein was better there.
Yeah.
She was.
And I mean, and World Team was interesting because you could see some of the people who were just sort of tired at the end of the season, and the other ones who were still riding the high coming up. Because like you mentioned earlier, like Riku and Ryuichi from Japan, who have been dominant the whole season, did just not quite as good at World Team while still being fantastic. But Alexa and Brandon were special at World Team.
They were, which might have been their last competitive competition.
Maybe we don't know, but I mean, it kind of seemed like it because there was a point of them leaving the ice where I think she kind of kissed the ice and looked teary, and it seemed like this might be the swan song.
I know, and her husband's off on the side, and I was like, oh no, this is it.
But if that was the case, they went out on a high because they were the best they'd been the whole season.
Absolutely.
At that show,
hands down.
And Chalk and Bates were explosive.
Yeah,
huge score, like absolutely massive.
World record breaking scores, which was pretty controversial online. And I'm shouting out another podcast. It's the new-ish podcast from Adam Rippon and Ashley Wagner, and not Olympic champion Sarah Hughes. And they were talking about this specifically. Sarah Hughes was, and I appreciated what she was talking about because people were getting mad that Maddie and Evan had broke a world record at World Team Trophy. And she talked through why that was a ridiculous argument. So I highly encourage you to go and find that podcast because, number one, it's really fun to listen to. But that episode about World Team Trophy, when she just kind of digresses down the rabbit hole about why arguing over that is silly, because rules change, scoring changes. It is not saying Maddie and Evan are better than Gabby and Guillaume or
Tessa and Scott.
Right. Yeah. But you know what? They are in that echelon, and them getting world record scores is not out of bounds. So calm down. Just calm down. Yeah.
Calm down.
But regardless, they were amazing, and their scores were probably a little inflated, but you know what? They were spectacular, and they deserved to be way ahead. I'll just say that. They were absolutely fantastic.
The thing with World Team, it should be noted, Shoma Uno was injured and did not come, and that hurt Japan.
Of course it did. Like, I mean, that could have absolutely changed the trajectory of who won that medal, but that's all maybe in conjecture because we don't know. But he had suffered that injury right before Worlds, muscled his way through it, and made himself a double gold medalist and world champion again. But when it came to World Team, he had to back away. I was sad personally because obviously I always want more Shoma, and I'm sure the Japanese team was certainly sad because they wanted his scores. But alas, they still came out with a bronze medal and had a beautiful time. And the one other thing I want to mention before we end this is Kana and Daisuke, because the Japanese dance team, which features Kana Muramoto and Daisuke Takahashi, skated their last competitive programs there. Breaks my heart to say that out loud because I am a forever Daisuke fan and I love them as a team.
They're wonderful.
But it was really wonderful to see them come out and, skate on home ice and just do a beautiful job. And it just still hurts a little bit to think they're not going to be there next season.
Oh, I mean, they were astonishing. Also, not for nothing, the final competition of Keegan Messing.
Oh, gosh, that was the final.
Yeah, which he was great. And also the gala, they really gave the Japanese crowd
the love.
Yeah,
they did.
They really, they made that super fun. The gala for that event was so fun. But
it was.
This is the thing, again, if you gave me the mission to be like, okay, here's a room full of Zoomers and like the youngest end of millennials, and you want to turn them into fans of figure skating, what would you show them? I would show them World Team Trophy 2023. I would put that in all of those things together and the gala at the end and be like, watch this. For one, because the event is set up in a way that, like, instead of a typical kiss and cry, all the teams have their own little booth. They're all like decked out with like crazy decorations. They're wearing silly, everything about it is super extra and really goofy and all about fun. And I think that like the younger generation is much more attracted to personality and vibes, and especially in a world that's as effed as this one is so much of the time, to have a thing that's all about joy. World Team Trophy was so much about joy. Yeah, you had some people who didn't do so great, and you had some people who kind of didn't have great performances and had to go sit and kiss and cry while their friends are like trying to hype them as they got a crappy score.
A little awkward.
It's a little awkward here and there, and certainly Canada and Italy and who was the other team? France. Overall, not massively competitive.
Massive credit to Kevin Amos, though, proving the point that he wasn't just a one-hit wonder at Worlds.
He was extraordinary at World Team Trophy. Kevin Amos came, I mean, and we already talked about him at Worlds where he had like the day of his life, the competition.
But then
of his
he
life.
had another day of his
And
life.
he had it all over again there.
Proving that he is not a one-hit wonder.
While at the same time being like in full drag on, in the...
Love him.
It was just...
Love him.
Hysterical and so much fun. But again, the shared camaraderie when you've got, the different teams and you can see that people are crossing over. There were several times where you'd see like Matteo Rizzo over at like the Japan teams things, sitting in with people and just how much fun everybody was having with it. Several interesting breakouts of people like the South Korean ice dance team who were like just fresh out of juniors. Who,
so much fun.
Were super fun and I don't know their names off the top of my head, but definitely a team to watch as they grow and develop because they were terrific at it. And Maddie Skizas having sort of a redemptive skate at the end of the season with her changed up programs and having a good time. Sarah Maud Dupuis getting to perform and all that stuff and things too. So anyway, just World Team was a delight. I wish that it was available somewhere to rewatch. Maybe it's hidden on YouTube somewhere, but if you haven't seen it and you can hunt it down on the skating black market or whatever, like if there's a Blu-ray release, I'll buy it. Like I'll watch it again. It
was super, super fun.
So great.
So let's end this with extremely quick. What are like the 2 or 3 top moments you can think of off the top of your head? Moments from the season.
Shoma's skates, because incredible. The quad axel, duh. Yeah, it was a
I
defiant.
almost feel like you put an asterisk on like other than the quad axel.
Yeah,
because obviously it's unbelievable.
Yeah, Jason Brown's Melancholy.
Oh my God,
which is just extraordinary.
You're at 3.
Give me 2 more.
Okay.
All of all of the skates from Riku and Ryuichi, because they were just some of my absolute favorite things of the season. I'm gonna ask for 2 more. Just Kaori's Elastic Heart, not always consistent, but when she nailed it, she nailed it. And my favorite short program of the entire season was My Miyahara, who was just thrilling. But bonus points for Junhwa and Hanley, because at the end of the season they were incredible. And Keegan Messing's 4 Continents performance, which was...
You just took them all. So what am I supposed to talk about? Other than that, I guess.
Yes and.
I guess yes and to most of those. Jason Brown's Melancholy is my favorite short program of the year for sure. But I agree with you that My Mihara's is a close second, just because there is a moment in there where she has a spin where she increases the speed on point with the music. And it's like my heart grows 3 sizes. It's gorgeous. So that's, I guess, 2, but I'm going to count it as 1. So I don't care about math. I think after that, actually, easy peasy. And it makes me sad to say it out loud because we didn't get to see them at Worlds, but it was Hawaiian and Baker's programs for this season.
God, they were so good.
They were exceptional. Their short program to Lucy and Desi music was by far my favorite short program, like rhythm dance of the season.
It was fantastic.
Loved it.
Yeah.
And I was heartbroken that I didn't get to see more of it. So I hope they pop it back out in an exhibition at some point. I would pay money to see that because it was a special program, but their long program, I hope they keep that for this coming year.
It was the best thing I've ever seen them do.
It is beautiful and unique, and we need more of them desperately. And I miss them dearly because they're such special skaters. So yeah, I think those are my yes ands. That's all I got.
All of that stuff. We'll do another episode where we talk about
and
going
Dice K. Always Dice K forever.
Dice K, yes. Going into next season, we're definitely seeing people doing the prep now. At least the ones who are not on tour.
If you're on Instagram, follow the Ice Academy of Montreal, because they're starting to share trailers. Little sneak peeks at the 80s themed rhythm dances we're going to be seeing next year. So.
Yeah. Well, also we've been seeing like a number of single skaters showing up at Montreal. Interesting ones.
Yeah,
Kaori Sakamoto is
Camden
up there.
Pukinen. I think Camden, I believe, is taking a year off from school. to focus and see how, a year without trying to be both a full-time student and a full-time skater.
Yeah, because he kind of washed out this last season.
And he knows it.
Yeah, but the program he's practicing, he's working on with Marie-France up there at Montreal, like, it's looking good.
It's looking real good.
On Ice Perspectives have done a bunch of pieces showing the work in progress on that, and it's compelling.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see, and we saw Shun Sato up there as well. Like it's an interesting group kind of showing up in Montreal from the singles side, trying to get some help. We saw Roman Sadovsky up there. Someday, man, I want to see Roman Sadovsky skate a clean program. That'd be great. He's a really talented skater who pisses me off so much.
So talented, just doesn't care enough.
I don't know what it is, but it's frustrating because he's so good, and it's like you could be so much more. But yeah, it'll be an exciting thing to see. And until then, I guess we'll just have to watch the socials and see how it goes.
Yeah, it's a good way to cap it, especially because we can hear our dog starting to get frustrated. He's like, I'm done with this. You guys need to be done with this too. So Choreography is available online at choreography.show. That's where you can find all the episodes and the content that's related to it. Socially, we're most active on Instagram, where we are at Choreography. Technically, we have a Twitter account, but I don't know. Just let that place burn. I don't even care about it anymore. We'll probably find another home for, especially like live posting and stuff during events as the new season comes along. But what that'll be just yet, we don't know. But for the time being, choreography.show, at Choreography on Instagram. We're on all the places. If you're listening to us, you probably already know that because you're on one of those places. But if not, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube. We're in all the places.
We're on the internets.
We're on the internet. You can find us.
With that,
for Choreography, my name is Adrian Buskey.
And I am Wendy Buskey.
And we will talk to you next time.
Bye.